All right, let's do
Okay.
this.
So, can you tell us about how you first got interested in physics?
Yeah, I guess my earliest memory of physics being an actual like subject was because I got grounded. So in high school, grounded for me meant being alone in my room, no TV, no electronic devices, no guitar, only books. And so I got grounded. I don't remember why, but I pulled a book off the shelf that was Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. And that book totally changed my life because I was in this mindset of being this really rebellious teenager, of sort of not wanting to believe anything grown-ups were telling me. So I started reading this book, and it was, telling me about objects falling at the same rate. If something was twice as heavy as another thing, they're both going to fall under Earth's gravity at the same rate. And I did not believe that, right? Why would I accept somebody's authority, right? Down with authority. Why would I accept somebody's authority on that thing? And I spent like an hour in my room alone, just like testing objects and like pretty much convincing myself that, oh my gosh, this is true. But it was that moment where it's realizing that physics isn't something that you have to just believe, right? It's not something just handed to you, like, here are the rules of physics, you must obey them. It's something that you can actually test for yourself, right? Which is like the coolest part about physics and science in general, is that they're testable hypotheses and we can do them for ourselves and actually understand and experience the world in this sort of rigorous scientific way. So after that, I was hooked, right? Like that experience of sort of being this rebellious teenager, not wanting to take someone's word for something, and then having that moment that, hey, I can use physics and figure out some truth about this world by myself. So that's my earliest like physics memory.
Story, but our next question is, can you describe a moment that has really excited you about physics?
Oh my gosh, okay, so I still think this is like the coolest thing ever, but I learned about the tennis racket theorem in upper division physics as an undergrad. Yeah, so tennis, this is a table tennis racket. But the tennis racket theorem involves, rotating objects. So if I rotate this ping pong paddle, I could rotate it sort of about its long axis like this, about its sort of shortest axis like this, or about its intermediate axis like this. And if I rotate it about the long axis, it sort of forms a nice stable rotation. Same thing if I rotate about the shortest axis, nice stable rotation. But if I rotate it about the intermediate axis, it chaotically flips back and forth. Right? You can test this with sort of any rectangular shaped object. I can take this notebook and sort of flip it around, and this intermediate axis is always going to flip in this really chaotic way. So the tennis racket theorem, or the intermediate axis theorem, explains why these objects where you've got the seemingly unintuitive thing of unstable rotation about the intermediate axis on an object. It comes sort of naturally out of this language that you learn in third-year mechanics, which is something that seems so simple that you need sort of the mathematical language of 2 years of an undergraduate degree to even understand. But then once you go through that and derive the intermediate axis theorem in that course of understanding rotating objects, this thing that was totally unintuitive sort of clicks in a very different way. And it's that beautiful mathematical language to describe it. And it's all sort of based in differential equations and linear algebra, all these tools that you build up over undergrad. Being able to describe that is just so satisfying because it just pops out, and it's such a clear moment of, now I understand this thing that seemed weird before. That's one of my favorites. Okay. Yeah, so I've got another example of when physics was really fun. And this moment came during my PhD, and it was sort of a year into my PhD. Nothing was working in the lab. Everything was broken. I had a bunch of experiments that I was trying, and they were all sort of failing. And there was this moment where it was just like testing that last thing. So actually, you all had this with your Bottle Rush team recently, and I was thinking that moment where you showed me the sample where the synthesis worked, after all the different things you had tried, is exactly this moment for me in my PhD. I was trying to measure these tiny droplets and look at the shape of these droplets under the microscope, but the shape was changing over time, and it shouldn't have been changing. And I didn't understand why, and I kept on trying all these different ideas, trying to figure out why the shape of these droplets is changing. And the droplets were actually degrading in the atmosphere. So the oxygen in the atmosphere was causing the material to break down, and the shape was changing because of that. And one day I set up a really long experiment where I put it under sort of nitrogen gas to prevent the air and the air, the water from the air interacting with the polymer that was causing these droplets to change shape. And I ran this really long experiment, watching them under the microscope, seeing the shape of these things. And it was actually an outreach day. So we had a bunch of elementary school kids come in to look at demos and to come in and see our all the experiments that we were doing. And I remember there was a whole group of kids nearby when I just yelled out like, yes, 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 because the thing that I had been trying for almost a year actually worked. And then once that happened, I was able to collect all this data so quickly, right? The progress just rapidly unfolded because we were able to debug and figure out what was going on. So it's the same thing with your bottle brush samples, where now that you have samples that are working, you're gonna be able to start making rapid progress compared to all of the frustration, all the hours of trying to brainstorm and figure out what's going wrong. And I think that's such a joyous part of science, when there's the technical challenge of figuring out what's going on. And then once you overcome those technical sort of challenges, those barriers, you're able to start making rapid progress. I don't know, it's a great moment, right? That moment where it actually worked.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, I still remember that moment like it was yesterday, where it's like, finally, something is working in the lab. And then you're able to discover something cool because you've overcome that hurdle to actually get the experiment done.
Yeah, we were talking about how quickly we can now start synthesizing the bottle brush, and we were like, oh my gosh,
Do it all in one day.
we can do it all in one day if we wanted.
Yeah, right? Once you get it once, then it's easy to reproduce, but sort of getting it that first time.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we hadn't gone through that struggle, I feel like we'd be blindly following the instructions set out for us instead of really understanding how much each step affects the result.
Totally, yeah. Anyway, I hope you're celebrating the momentous occasion.
I definitely told everyone I knew.
Yeah, we walked, we saw Dalton. Right?
Yeah, we saw Dalton and we're like, Dalton, stop. We need to
touch this thing. Look, it is solid. It is not goop. No.
Yeah, we joked we were gonna get a little cupcake and put a candle on it. Like a birthday.
Yeah, you almost don't want to test that sample, right?
Yeah.
Keep that. I mean, when you cut up the dog bone from it, definitely keep the rest of it as a memory.
Yes.
That's funny.
Historical.
Little box.
Yes.
What's your favorite part about doing work as both a researcher and a professor?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's so much joy in doing science, and a lot of that joy comes from working with other people. So pretty lucky I get to work with curious undergrads such as yourselves. I get to work with wonderful collaborators in biology and chemistry and material science and engineering. And sort of that interaction with other people and sort of getting to see other people's ideas, getting to work with people who are curious and engaged with asking questions about the world. That never gets old, right? And there's always sort of a new question to ask, and you can get excited about ideas that other people are bringing. And, oh my gosh, they get excited about ideas that you have, and yeah, it's the people that sort of fuel the process for me, and that is the best part, is actually getting to work with amazing people.
And this ties really nice. Your answer ties super nicely into our last academia centered question, which is, do you think physics is important for everyone? And if you do, why?
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess I think is physics important for everyone? do I think that everyone needs to take a physics course? I don't necessarily think so, but I think there are ways of physics thinking that people sort of come at intuitively. And I think fostering that sort of intuitive approach to understanding the world around us and that sort of curiosity to test things, to try things out, to be skeptical, to not necessarily trust things on authority, I feel like that is part of physics thinking. So I think physics is for everybody, and I think it does provide a really great lens to look at the world with. We can use our tools as physicists or as people who have taken some amount of physics and apply that to so many areas of life. If we're thinking of the biggest problems in the world, like climate change, thinking of what the solutions to some of those energy problems might be, they're going to be grounded in physical principles. And so, I think there are some things that if you know some physics, you can really make an impact on the world. Technologically.
So we have a little section about like non-academic stuff as well.
I only do academic stuff. No.
Even who reads
Yeah.
So we're curious about outside of academics. What do you like to do in your free time?
Yeah, I love being outdoors. I love hiking, spending time in nature. I love playing video games, watch TV, things like that. And physics.
What sort of video games do you like to play?
I love adventure games. I love sports games. I've gotten really into Breath of the Wild in the past couple of years. Spent a lot of time exploring around in Breath of the Wild. Yeah. Also, a lot of Mario Kart. My wife and I play some Mario Kart battles, sort of every week. An ongoing feud between Tanuki and Dry Bowser.
That's true.
I love that. Do you have a favorite part of Breath of the Wild?
This is maybe kind of lame, but my favorite part of Breath of the Wild is just that same curiosity of exploring and then being rewarded for that curiosity, right? Like you wander around this beautiful map in nature, which I guess is also my similar like of hiking, right? And then you get to explore this thing that looks weird and come across something new. I guess that's kind of like what we do in physics. So yeah, I feel like it resonates with me on a more than just a decompress, turn my mind off way, but it's fun to explore this different world.
That was an amazing answer, and I love that.
It's on brand.
It's very on brand.
Very on brand, yeah, right. The same kid who's like, oh, I can drop stuff from like standing in my bedroom, drop some different pencil lengths to see if things fall at the same rate, is the one that's like, oh yeah, I can explore this open world and figure out what's going on. Yeah.
That's so good. Mm-hmm. And I guess as a final one, do you want to explain the shirt you're wearing right now?
My shirt is from the Corgi Nationals, which was a hilarious and cute event where people brought their corgis to Santa Anita Park and raced them against each other. And the most wonderful part about corgi races is that the corgis don't know they're racing. So these cute dogs are just running around, causing chaos. And watching dogs run around, play with each other in the context of like seeing hundreds of corgis in this beautiful open space. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, is it true that you and Prof Bresnay were part of rival research groups?
It is true that Prof Bresnay and I were part of rival research groups. We didn't know each other at the time, but when he was a graduate student, I was an undergrad. We were in the same research field. Our advisors were very much in competition with each other. And, I think there was a keen spirit of competition for the sake of bettering science, mixed up maybe with a little bit of ego in there. So yeah, in a sense, Prof Bresnay is still my rival to this day. I will discover things about quantum materials, and compete with it. No, I'm just kidding. We are so not like that. You know, and I think that's also what I love about what we do is it's so collaborative, and we don't have to have this sort of fake competition to be the first to contribute this new idea, right? We're really working in this space where we can put out ideas even if they're not fully developed yet without worrying that people are going to steal them from us. And it's just such a healthier thought of, instead of thinking of other scientists as competitors, thinking of how can I collaborate with them.
Thank you.
That's all of our on the
That's all
camera
of it.
questions. Yes.